And in applying, I just wrote a letter to the matron of the day. Her name was Matron Stevens. And I received a reply back which said I was accepted for an interview and that I was to wear dress, hat, gloves and bag. And so my mother, who was a milliner, duly made me a new hat. And so we travelled from Queenstown, where I was born on the west coast, and I was told to bring my mother with me as well. So we walked into this room in the old hospital, where the Charles is now, on the first floor, a very small room, and this imposing figure, and all matrons seem to have big bosoms and big veils. And she was a very upright lady, and she sat the other side of the desk, and she proceeded really to lecture me about how hard it was going to be and how difficult, and there would be things that I'd do that were very unpleasant and I'd find hard to handle. And she said, and that sometimes you'd be reduced to tears, and at that stage I heard behind me, sniff, sniff, and Mother's reduced to tears. So that was...
I remember that first evening when we got settled into our rooms, and we were in partitioned rooms.
Yes.
It was only a partition went so high, and if we stood on our chair, we could look over and talk to each other all the way down this corridor, all the partitions along there. But I remember they gave us uniforms, and we had buttons with, what did you call it? Shanks that slid on the bottom of those, and we had really stiff white collars with a stud that sat right there. And just rubbed us like crazy. We all had these red marks on there, and we had to
make the red ones.
Yes. So that first night we all got our uniforms and we had them hanging up ready. The next morning is a morning I'll never forget. Of course, we all got up early. We were so excited. We were trying these uniforms on and getting dressed up and everything, and we had to go to breakfast over in the dining room. Probably for the first time. I don't know what we did that first night. No idea. But I can remember going over there for breakfast.
Yeah. We were learned how to damp dust, like Florence Nightingale.
And put Bon Ami on the overbed tables and the lockers tops.
We used to have to tidy all the wards up. All the beds had to be all made and no dips in them, and no, curtains all right, all pleated. Didn't matter that the bloke in bed wasn't comfortable. And then get someone to come and check your work.
We used to Bon Ami their lockers and their overbed tables. And so while you're there doing all that, you're talking to the patient. You're getting to know them and understanding them and finding out if they had problems. Sometimes they'd talk to the junior nurse. They wouldn't talk to the doctor or the senior nurse or something, but because they probably thought it was too much fuss or something, but they just sort of open up to us. Matron's round day, everything had to be spick and span, and even the patients, they weren't allowed to move virtually. They would sit in their beds and you'd say, "Don't move, we've folded that down nicely," and matron would come around and talk to the nurses, or the patients, I mean. And we'd stand there with our little hands behind our backs.
If you had any misdemeanours, you were lined up in front of, down the passageway to see matron office. Now, you were sent to matron's office if you broke a thermometer. That was a definite no. And of course, flicking, you broke them quite. So there was a steady stream lining up. And if you were late getting in after 11:30, matron's office, or if you spoke back to any of the charge sisters, matron's office. So there's always a steady stream of girls waiting to go and see matron in the morning at 9 o'clock.
Meals used to be a nightmare because one of the sub-matron often used to take a meal, didn't she? She'd take a meal, or somebody senior would take the meal, and they would be at their table. Well, then further down the table you went, and more junior you were, the further you went. But every time somebody more senior than the person who was already there, we all had to hop up, didn't we? Every time somebody more senior than the person who was originally the senior one. We'd all have to hop up when they came in, and we were up and down like a yo-yo, having a meal.
And it was good in the sense that you learned to respect your seniors, and they knew more than we did, and therefore I think it was the respect thing that was knocked in with the battering ram, and it didn't do us any harm. Didn't do us any harm at all. I still respect my seniors, not many of them now, but I still respect them.
When my mother trained, they didn't have a school of nursing. They had to do their lectures in their own time. So I thought I worked long hours. I think they worked really long hours, and they had to go to lectures.
Oh no, we had doctors came for the lectures. For physicians and surgeons and so on. They would come when we got to specialty stuff. Don't think any of them came when we were in PDS. I think that was all pretty basic, how to sponge a patient, things like that. But then we did have pharmacists when we did our first year, which was drugs and things like that. Pharmacists came, so we did our surgical block, there'd be surgeons, medical block, the physicians would come along.
Well, in prelim, it was the bed making, the bandaging, the washing sort of thing, this sort of business, and making sure your corners on the bed was right and the pillows ends faced away from the door.
We actually learnt lots of the basics. We had classroom lectures and notes, and within the school we had practical learning, making beds, setting up trays, and we went into the wards to do very basic things like cleaning the pan room and tidying the linen cupboards, and that was about all we did at that stage in the wards.
The one thing that sticks out about it all was it was the hardest work I've ever done. I'll never forget that. It was really hard work, and I talk about things that are hard now, but I'll say it was never as hard as when I did my training.
I remember going on duty and thinking, how on earth am I going to get through this, because I doubled with her the day before, but then to suddenly be thrown in, you'd know what I'm talking about, be thrown in and have to do all these toasts and things yourself and remember where things were. That was a big job, and then we had to clean all the pans, do the panning, clean the pan room, and I think we had to get to breakfast somewhere in that, in the middle of all that.
But then you start to develop a little bit of confidence, and by the time you're sort of into your second placement, it wasn't quite so bad, and you start to feel a bit more confident, and by then there was another little group coming up, and so you weren't, the youngest ones anymore, so you could show them some stuff, and it was a bit better from that point of view. It was acknowledged that you had some skills by then, but still scary, yeah. But
it wasn't like now that one person looks after the whole patient. You had specific tasks. So the junior nurse did the morning teas and afternoon teas and suppers and things like that, and did all the panning. I mean, if someone wanted to pan, they told the junior nurse to go and get it. And then the next stage was surgical nurse, and you did all the dressings. And so you boiled up all the instruments in the little sterilisers in the pantry. We didn't have autoclaves then. And even the senior nurses did the injections, but all the syringes had to be boiled, and the needles were sharpened and reused.
They always had
there were a few old chronics that lived on the veranda.
During the war,
ruled the roost.
We didn't have disposable syringes like they do now, and sometimes the needles they'd be used, and he used to straighten them out or sharpen them a bit.
Yes, he
had
did.
a rub stone. That's what he used to do to help us.
Oh, I know there was another place we used to go, St Albie's, which was a dancing spot.
Yeah.
But the worst part about it, if you didn't have an overnight stay out, you had to be back in and have asked to be back in at 12 o'clock. Well, you'd be probably having a dance, the last dance or something, and look up and you'd say, oh my God, it's 5 to 12, I've got to go. So you'd drop this poor bloke and you'd run through the big brick fields and get up to the hospital, to the nursing home, and you'd be late. Standing there with a face like this, and she'd say, you're late. I know, I had to run all the way from St Albans, and she'd say, you're still late. If you'd been another 5 minutes, you'd have been going to the matron. So you breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, thanks very much, and you'd go back to your room.
You had a terrible day on the wards, but you could always go up to the nurse's home, and somebody else would have had a day just as badly as you had. And
well, we cancelled each other, didn't we?
Absolutely, yes.
I went with the intention of doing 4 years, but the war was on. Well, the next lot that signed on, they only had to sign on for 3 years. But that was. But matron was determined that the exams were just going to be the same standard. Wasn't going to lose any standard through having less training. We had a hospital exam before we were. Hospital finals before we did state finals. If we didn't pass hospital finals, we didn't go on to state.
It was the day they bombed Darwin when I did my finals.
Yes.
At this morning's official opening of the School of Nursing, Premier Robin Gray defended his government's decision to transfer nurse education facilities to the TSIT.
I know there was concern at the time that perhaps nurses trained in colleges would not have the practical experience that the hospital-trained nurses have had, but I think quite clearly now the profession is benefiting from college-based training.
The new extensions to the School of Nursing marked the completion of the development. The first stage opened in January last year. A new building to teach applied science, extensions to the library and the construction of another 104 bedrooms have cost the government $10.5 million to finish the project.
This year we took in 150 students. Next year we will take in approximately 250 students.
The only remaining hospital-based nurse training scheme is at the Royal Hobart. The last intake of students there will be halfway through this year.